right, hello, and welcome to the show. Whoa, Garrett, you shifted all the way to the right. Hold on, there you go.
Sorry, video game talk.
Welcome to Video Game Talk. I'm Rich Alvarez, and to my left or right, to my right is Mr. Introduce yourself.
Garrett Allen. Yeah. Woo!
Cool. All right, we've got a lot to talk about today, mostly Star Wars stuff, a little bit of Death Stranding information, and, you know, before I get into the rules, and I think it is important that we jump right into something before we get into the rules, otherwise we'll lose a lot of people, but so Battlefront, the DLC, Resurrection came out, and it reveals some pretty pertinent information. It's gonna kill a lot of people's theories, but hey, dem's the brakes, guys. Anyways,
Dem's the brakes.
Yeah.
Also,
So
apparently my audio needs to come up a little bit. So if you can do that, that'd be awesome.
I'm doing that right now. All right.
You rock.
So that's happening. Anyways, now we'll get into this stream. This stream lasts about an hour, although it might be a little bit shorter today because I do need to get to the theater so that I can watch The Last Jedi premiere tonight. Generally, what we do is we do about 40 to 50 minutes of talking about video games and then save the last 10 to 20 minutes to answer your live questions on YouTube. If you are not watching this live, then go ahead and put a comment in the comment section below, and we will answer it as soon as we can. And then, so there you go. But we might keep it down to about 30 minutes of discussion and 10 minutes of comments today, and that's okay because this is gonna be a super quick but dense episode. All right, Garrett, what are we talking about first today?
We're talking about the new Battlefront 2 DLC, is my understanding.
That's
because,
correct.
you know, EA has put out really, are we calling this the Last Jedi DLC? Is that fair? I know it doesn't relate directly to that, but
without spoiling anything, I will say that to me, this feels like the true and proper ending to this game, and for whatever reason they segmented it and put it off to, you know, save for later, but it leads right up to the minute before Last Jedi starts. Like, you know,
okay,
you go through
setup DLC.
Yeah, you go through what would be the Force Awakens, but from Aiden's point of view. All right, so there might be a couple of spoilers for you all, especially if you haven't finished the actual story of Star Wars Battlefront. So spoiler warning right now. Just putting that spoiler warning up right now. Okay, glad you got your spoiler warning. Guess what, guys? Del dies at the end of Star Wars Battlefront. Sorry, that I gave you the spoiler warning. So Del dies at the end of Star Wars Battlefront, the story mode. This DLC begins right where that, literally the first scene is the last scene. So Del dies, and then you are Aiden Versio, and she's looking for her husband Del. But there was one big thing at the end of the game where
not that you ever play Del.
No.
He's a great character, and he's very interactable. But you know, yeah, you never play him. I mean, this game is really about Aiden,
right?
Really, at the end of the day.
During that segment, you played as Kylo Ren going through Del's mind.
Yes, that was interesting. I did enjoy that.
Yeah. So, anyways, what goes on is you're looking for Del, and you're now an older Aiden Versio in her 50s, 60s, looking for him. But at the end of the game, it was like, oh, you have a daughter, fatherhood, and for some reason, Star Wars fans are like, oh, Aiden and Del have a daughter. It must be Rey, because if anyone has a daughter,
the daughter word.
If anyone has a daughter, it has to be frickin' Rey, because a couple in the galaxy who happens to have a daughter at that perfect time, it must be Rey. Guess what, guys? I'm sorry, but in the very first mission in this DLC, you are older Aiden, and you're with your daughter Zay. I know it kind of rhymes with Rey. It's Z-A-Y. But she's nothing like Rey, and she doesn't speak in a British accent. It's Aiden and Del's daughter, Zay, and she's part of Inferno Squad with Aiden, the new Inferno Squad. And she's not Rey, guys. So the theory is completely debunked, and I can't believe I didn't see more about that yesterday or the day before, whenever. I think this DLC was released fairly recently, within the last couple days. But I can't believe how many people haven't already made videos about this, that it's confirmed for absolute certainty that Rey is not the daughter of Iden and Del. So I'm sorry to have, busted all your balls on that one for any Iden and Del, like, Iden plus Del people or whatever. Guess what, guys? And again, I know I spoke about.
What are you trying to say, Rich? What are you trying to say?
I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I really here it's like I know that I spoke ad nauseum about this yesterday on the Star Wars Talk too. That guess what, guys? I haven't seen Last Jedi yet. I'm seeing it tonight, but I would put money and I put beer on it with D-Rock that Rey's parents are just Joe and Schmo Rey. Like, Rey might not even be her real name, but her parents are probably just nobodies. Who knows? And everybody's just making a... Because I just recently watched The Force Awakens again, and it's the way that she talks about it. She's like, oh, my parents are coming back for me. Like, Rey knows who her parents were, and they probably were just normal people. And, Maz Kanata even says, your parents are your past, Luke is your future, which should have told everybody then that Luke was not her parent, and also that her parents were these nobodies that abandoned her. So, sorry guys, but, it is what it is. Anyways, now we'll move on past that. What do I think about the rest of the DLC? It added some much needed new variety in everything. I mean, I already like the space missions in the regular Battlefront story mode, but now you get to do all like the First Order / Resistance fighters too. And it definitely gives a whole new, again, try not to spoil anything, but there are things that you do that takes place concurrently with things in Force Awakens. Like, if there was ever moments in Force Awakens when you were like, oh, gee, that was dumb. That was really easy for the Resistance to do that. It wasn't easy. Iden had something to do with it. Get over it. And
why are you becoming so why are you picking up the Star Wars fandom by this graph and being like, listen here
yeah, so anyways,
you're kind of laying into him, my man. You're kind of laying into him, but all right.
There was a couple other Battlefront.
They're a passionate bunch.
There was a couple other Battlefront related things I wanted to get into in the actual game. And when I say the actual game, I mean the non-DLC. We see Luke stealing the compass from Palpatine's treasure vault, and we know now, it's been confirmed by Rian Johnson of all people, that compass is what Luke used to make the map of himself that he gave to Max von Sydow's character in Force Awakens to get the map to him. And that also has something to do with how he unlocks it with the Darth Vader kyber crystal he wears on his chest. And that has also been canon. I guess it's not really explained in the movie, but so Rian Johnson just came out and said, oh yeah, that's Darth Vader's kyber crystal. So Luke is wearing...
It's his kyber crystal on his chest?
It is most definitely
bummer,
Darth Vader's.
Because I had this awesome theory that Kylo Ren's lightsaber contained a Darth Vader's kyber crystal.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody said, but now it's like, I think that's just like how... I think that was Kylo trying to make his own kyber crystal and he failed miserably, so it's...
just super imperfect and messed up.
Yeah. Who knows? But anyways, so there's that, and I felt like there was something else. I guess we would have talked about the possibility of the parentage, except that's definitely not happening now. So there's all of that. Anyways, so Gary, do you want to get into... Actually, let me just give a quick intro on Death Stranding, and then I'll let you go to town on it.
Well, we should also mention a few more things about Star Wars, too.
Oh, okay.
It's worth mentioning that, because people hear the word DLC, and that comes with a little bit of weight, but this is a free DLC. That's my understanding. My understanding is this is a free update, and that you don't pay more money for it, or anything like that, keeping with EA's initial agreement not to make, storyboard expansions paid money. So, this should be available to all those people that have Battlefront already. And, you can continue on from there. Much like we saw the, kind of like the Rogue One, the Scarif DLC from the first Battlefront.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and again, I have the season pass, so I don't know what is and isn't free, but I believe that you're right that this was free DLC.
Is there a season pass for this game, or did you just get, the pro bono version of it with, all the extra stuff?
There was a season pass, but I don't know if that has been, so many things have changed since the game came out, so I don't know what that entails anymore. It's really weird how that works, but I think you're absolutely right. Is there anything else we should say about Battlefront and Star Wars before moving on?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think they've held or changed anything about their loot box situation right now. So there's no real updates on that as far as like new information or new additions to the controversy. If you're interested in kind of like the loot box discussion, that was our video last week. You can go check that out. I know a lot of people remain diametrically opposed to Battlefront 2 on the basis that it continues to, kind of propagate its loot box program. Future EA releases have already been shown to have the loot box system implemented. So if you're on the loot box crusade, I guess hold strong. There hasn't really been any compromise there. But as far as, those of you who own Battlefront or are interested in playing it or seeing how it relates to Last Jedi, here's a cool little DLC. And if I had to speak one, real big sentence of praise on it, I'm glad to see that the single player is getting more attention, because that was a big concern of mine, is that, they were going to get a campaign and it was just going to kind of check it off the list. And then we weren't really going to see anything else come of it. And the rest of the updates were going to be multiplayer focused, because that's kind of traditionally where the Battlefront crowd kind of sits. But I'm glad. I'm glad we're seeing single player content being developed, and I'm glad we're seeing that propagation continue. So that's all good. I think that's all I have to say on it.
Cool. I feel like I might have had a couple more things to say about it, and I should have written it down. But I mean, ultimately, guys, like, my final, because this might be the last time we talk about Battlefront 2 until something major happens. But my final thoughts on Battlefront 2 is it is a pretty good game. And yes, there were a lot of technical problems, especially on the DLC front, but I still think that the game, if you want a really good, probably the best, it's still the best single-player Star Wars experience in a long time. If you want a good Star Wars game, Battlefront 2 is still a good Star Wars game. Do I think Star Wars could be handled better in the hands of a better developer? Of course. But this is what we have right now, and it's pretty decent. If you are at least a big fan of Star Wars, I'd say that Star Wars Battlefront is worth it. And honestly, I think that's where we're at. I think that's probably the last we'll say about it for a while. What do you think?
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. We're gonna go ahead and, I don't know. Yeah, it's gonna be one of those things. This is gonna be an ongoing, sort of thing. We'll probably touch on Star Wars more after after we both collectively get a chance to see the Last Jedi. I'm sure you will have a lot more to talk about that on your show with Derek. So that'll be all good. But as far as this game is concerned, yeah, it'll be good. I know you and me still sit on the fence of like, maybe let Bethesda have a crack at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think we're both in agreement that that's probably a good idea. I think that's all I need to say.
I got my Star Wars The Last Jedi shirt on right now, so I'm like, Star Wars!
Star Wars! Yeah. I am wearing my Evolutions shirt.
I was joking the other day that I haven't been excited about anything since 2013. but I mean, that's simply not true. It's just a joke. But
yeah, right.
But I've been overstressed. A lot of people, hey, guess what? Rich is gonna break a little bit right now. I've been overstressed with the finishing of the stupid Mario Legacy movie and trying to get everything good on this channel and kind of like just trying to acclimate back to normal living after that. But I will say that as unenthused as I may seem, I am very excited for this movie. That every single critic has said that it's either on par with or better than The Empire Strikes Back, and over 50% of people said that this is hands down the best Star Wars movie ever. And I love Star Wars more than life itself, so I can't wait to see this movie.
The consensus appears to be that this is a pretty stellar Star Wars movie. Although, to be fair, critics came, or a lot of at least the celebrity endorsements of Star Wars came swinging out the gate for the last Star Wars too. And I loved the last Star Wars, but I had reservations about it. I don't know. My hopes remain really just catastrophically high.
I mean, yeah, I like The Force Awakens. I actually did prefer Rogue One, but we'll see how this stacks up next to all those. And I will.
I love Rogue One. I know that's mixed with that's met with mixed, sort of continuity in the Star Wars fandom. But I really loved the shit out of Rogue One. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to more like
For
it.
for
So
anyone
that sounds
who's
cool.
going to be staying up late tonight waiting for like actual like YouTuber reviews and stuff, then you could stay up. I'll be doing mine at some point tonight. And yeah, so just look forward to my Last Jedi initial review tonight. I think if the movie's going to be out, so it will be a spoiler review. So keep that in mind. But I mean, there's at this point you've already seen all the non-spoiler reviews out there from everyone else, so it's fine.
Yeah, right.
But anyways, yeah. So my review coming tonight, and with that, I think that we can finally lead into Death Stranding.
Death Stranding. Well, I guess raise your hand in the chat if you're even familiar with Death Stranding as a project, let alone what it entails, because it's an obscure one and definitely one of those ones that if you're not somebody kind of looking for information on it, then might have flown under your radar. But
I was actually
it's a
going to ask you if, like, when you brought it up the other day after the trailer had been released, had you heard of Death Stranding before that trailer?
I heard about Death Stranding at the same time you did,
Okay.
with the initial what my friend group has come to entail. We call the first trailer the Norman Reedus and the Funky Fetus trailer.
That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, the we saw that first trailer because we're big Hideo Kojima fans, as a lot of us are. That's not a big stretch to say. I know you are, and I know a lot of the fans are. At least enough to constantly correct our pronunciation of his name, which is important, I'll give you. But it all speaks to the idea that a lot of people are fans of his, or at least Metal Gear fans. And I know there's been a lot of, I won't say controversy, maybe unease is a better word, associated with, Hideo's separation from the parent company and all this sort of stuff, and, what that means as far as the future of Metal Gear, especially in the face of mixed reviews for Metal Gear 5, and then whatever the hell that Metal Gear Online thing was that I really didn't even pay any mind to. Do you know anything about that?
So yeah, the everything, including Metal Gear Online, anything that came after the initial release of Metal Gear Solid 5 has nothing to do with Hideo, and it's all this weird corporate like hierarchy at Konami. Understanding that Konami is not really a video game company anymore. They're really they just make gambling machines in Tokyo, and they are kind of begrudgingly holding on to the little bit of gaming that they have left over because they're like, well, I guess Metal Gear's a big success. We better hold on to that. But like,
Yeah, they'll milk it. That EP is still worth something.
But they didn't want to keep paying Hideo the big bucks, so they had to let him go. And unfortunately, that meant letting him go like a year before Metal Gear Solid 5 was even finished, and therefore the ending of that game really suffered. And, of course, he had nothing to do with the online mode, so that ended up being whatever that is. And it's unfortunate
weird.
because I think that there is a lot people say like, oh, the gameplay in Metal Gear Solid 5 is incredible. The story is absolute shite though. And I think that there was the beginnings of a good plot there, but without Hideo to finish up his thoughts, it's just dog shit.
Yeah, that's fair. So, that Konami is going to be what it's going to be. Metal Gear is going to be what it's going to be. No one feels great about seeing that series kind of condemned to the fate that it's going to unfortunately live out. I don't see a large possibility that IP is going to trade hands, or that we're going to see a whole lot more from Metal Gear in the future. So I don't know. I say that with mixed things, but if Death Stranding is is any indication, it's the idea that like we can dial in, and all of us Metal Gear fans can kind of rally around the idea that like, okay, so maybe Metal Gear is over, or at least indefinitely over, or over until further notice. We can still rally behind the idea that somebody out there is going to make a game that, even though it's not a Metal Gear game, even though it's not, anything that features those characters or that setting that we've come to enjoy, it could still wrap us in on that same fundamental level. And I'm really willing to give Death Stranding that chance because from what I've seen so far, which is basically the 3 cinematic non-gameplay trailers, so take this within the context of, that we haven't seen gameplay, we don't really know anything about like what that's going to look like. I mean, we're not even sure. We assume it's kind of going to be a third-person action game, a la the kind of the Metal Gear formula.
We
But
assume, but it
yeah,
could
we
not be
assume
all.
that it could be something wildly different.
I mean,
So
Hideo does like to take an awful lot of risk, not just with his style, but also his gaming. I mean,
yeah,
I've always felt like if you've ever played, Metal Gear or even Zone of the Enders, Hideo is very much a movie director disguised as a video game developer, and I really think, especially I still think his greatest game of all time still might be Metal Gear Solid 4, which I thought was a perfect actual ending to that series, and it was almost objectively over 50% cinematics. and
it was a lot. It was a lot of cinematics.
but there was never. I know that some people have different opinions, but for me, I was never like, "Oh, this is too much cinematic." I couldn't wait to get to the next cinematic. In fact, the gameplay is what I felt got in the way of just watching an incredible Hideo movie.
I know, right?
So it definitely felt. I felt fulfilled by that story too. It really felt like Hideo had gone the extra mile to really fulfill the promise of his Solid Snake character and the story that he had laid down, decades earlier. And it felt so perfect. And I can get into how MGS5 destroyed all that, but but the point is, Hideo
We
is
kind of
such
already
a
did. Hideo's separation from the project condemned it. That's really what it comes down to.
so with
I said Hideo. Hideo.
Hideo.
Hideo is his name. That's how you say his name.
So
All right.
with Death Stranding, it's like I don't know what to expect. I'm assuming we're going to get an ultra whatever it is. It's going to be very unique and very different. Obviously,
I know you haven't watched a lot of the trailers. I've watched all of them like 9 times, but
Yeah.
they're weird. I'm just gonna tell you, they're weird. They're real weird. But I like what I see. Oh man, do I like what I see so far. And it's exactly that sort of like completely what the hell am I looking at out there crap that we've come to expect from Hideo. And that's super. I'm great with it. Also, the inclusion of a handful, at least 2, like major Hollywood talents, is that's really cool. I mean, the idea that we have like Norman Reedus in the game voicing Norman Reedus's character, that's also something that somebody who is low-key a movie director trying to be a game developer and all that sort of stuff would do. It's like, oh, we're going to take an actual actor, we're going to cast them in a live CG version of themselves as the focus of this game. I mean, at this point, we assume that the Norman Reedus character is going to be focused on, it's going to be focused around that one. The Maz character, I think, is how you say his name? Is it Mads Mikkelsen? How do you say
Mads Mikkelsen.
Mads Mikkelsen. Okay, so the Mads character is maybe also going to be playable. I don't know. His one appearance in the trailers that we saw paints him kind of on an antagonistic level, considering he was had black tar stuff growing on his skin and had this weird 4-piece spinal implant thing that was controlling a bunch of undead soldiers around him.
I think that's perfect for him, though. I think that Mads Mikkelsen really works best. I mean, I did actually really like him as Galen in Rogue One, but I think that Mads Mikkelsen really works well as the bad guy. People didn't like him in Doctor Strange, but I thought that he worked really well in Doctor Strange. Yeah.
He's a menacing looking dude. Can't get around that.
What else?
And
I mean,
meanwhile, Norman Reedus has kind of always played or not really always, but has very typically played kind of the gruff hero-ish dude. With I would say Norman Reedus's 2 biggest screen credits being probably The Walking Dead and Boondock Saints.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? Those are his 2 most well-known things.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's fair. But anyway, this new trade we've got, the Video Game Awards came around, and I'll just say right out the gate, traditionally I'm not a big fan of the Video Game Awards. I don't think anything interesting comes out of them. But
so fake. Fake news.
Yeah. Mega super duper fake news video game wise. And cool. I don't want to downplay anybody who was really deserving of an award and won one from the Video Game Awards. That's cool and whatnot. But traditionally it's a really bought out, very commercialized event, and I just don't put a lot of clout in it personally. But every once in a while something really good comes of it. We get some new exposure on a game like Death Stranding, and something really interesting like that comes around. And we got that this time. We got 9 minutes of cinematic trailer featuring some of the weirdest stuff we've seen from Death Stranding so far. Because there's a few different topics I want to touch on for Death Stranding as far as just what we know about the game so far. We got the first trailer, which is really just Norman Reedus on the beach, struggling around. I would say the big weird takeaway from that one was just the sense that like reality was really suspended, that things weren't really happening, like in a super like continuous sort of way. And then he's got there's the baby that he's got, and that's like, what is that about? And you don't really know what's going on. And then they released their second trailer, which featured the war-torn city. And that was the first time that I think we started to get some questions as far as like, when does this game even take place? Which is an important question, because in the 3 trailers that have come out, we've seen futuristic technology, overtly, very much not now, and futuristic technology with like futuristic like rover type vehicles, advanced backpacks, their little like I guess like the Spectre detector things that they sit on their backs or whatnot, like very futuristic technology. And then right next to it, we have them intermingling with technology, rifles, uniforms, kits that are World War II. We have people running around in Vietnam gear. It's like every single set of it's really weird. And then the second trailer had World War II style bombers flying around in it, but with like modern tanks and whatnot. So there's this idea that something's really weird with like maybe the timeline. And I'll get to what my theory is at the end, but just the idea that like they've obviously gone way out of their way to present the idea to show in these trailers that like here's stuff from World War II intermingling with obviously future level technology, intermingling with 1960s technology, with and then there was like the super duper chaos tank that we saw in the second trailer. It was like the modern armor tank, and it was like overflowing with biological material. It had like growths on it. It had like these worm like maggot things that were like growing on it. There were all the skeleton soldiers that were obviously undead. And then you had Mads' character who was rocking like very much modern equipment with like nanomachine, like connectors to all these other soldiers and whatnot. So tons of questions. But it all lends down to the idea that there's one consistent nomenclature or kind of one consistent imagery amongst all the trailers. And that is the baby. There's this very young like preemie, obviously not even old enough to be born yet, sort of like I guess a fetus is for lack of a better term. These super preemie babies that are the imagery in all of them. In the first trailer, Norman Reedus just finds the baby on the beach. In the second and third trailer, we see them confined in these tanks. There was what was it? What would you call them? I guess they're like these little incubation chambers, and they have these plugs that obviously like run into people. And there's these babies that are obviously like thriving in them, and they're like a big central part of the imagery all over. And that's interesting. And I think this is where the theory part begins. So we've talked enough about kind of what I think is going on, or what we've seen, and why it's all kind of weird. And now I'm going to kind of start to get into what I think is going on. So from here on out is speculation. So I think what we're dealing with here is a situation where death is literally stranded. Like death as like not necessarily a biological concept, but as an entity. Is stranded in our reality. And as a result, life, death, the progression of biological time and whatnot isn't really normal. It's not happening correctly. And that would explain kind of like what the huge like 90-story tall Lovecraftian specters are. That might explain why there's all the crazy things that like don't see but can detect breath and like life. and whatnot are just like running around as just like the handprints on the in the mud and whatnot. It might explain why so many people are willing, like as soon as they encounter a lot of enemies in these trailers, they opt to just immediately kill themselves as opposed to dealing with them. It might be because we're stuck in this game is stuck in a period of time where like the normal life death rules aren't applicable. I also think that these fetus like sort of imagery that we see here, there's like this obvious like sort of artificial womb thing that we got going on. I think these are rebirth chambers. I think due to the state of things in this particular world, people are able to like take these machines and like plug themselves into them, and then if they die while plugged in, then their consciousness lives on in the form of this, you know, like this other baby that's going to be born, and that allows people kind of an out in order to sort of like combat death and whatnot, because it looks like the enemies in this. I mean, I have yet to see in this game so far, especially in this third trailer, a single enemy that even looks defeatable by conventional means. The second trailer was cool because we had like a lot of soldiers running around, a lot of people in like World War II kits, a lot of people with guns and whatnot, and you could really imagine this being something like Metal Gear, where there's going to be like a lot of fight outs and whatnot, and maybe operating under the understanding that undeath has become a thing because death is stranded in our realm. Armies can resurrect their soldiers, which would make sense that you know, like they have you know, a supply of soldiers that are like still going from World War II or died in World War II. And they have a supply of equipment that's like still going from World War II. Another extrapolated version of the theory is that maybe those wars never even stopped. You know, maybe we've just been fighting throughout the ages because death isn't really necessarily a consequence. Anyway, that all lends to the idea of like a shooter. You know, like this idea, like we got this immense action game with tons and tons and tons of what is it? Like tons and tons and tons of different sort of like mixed consequence results and you know, like battlefield clash scenarios. And then we get to the third trailer where we don't see anybody successfully kill anybody. We see basically a handful of human dudes who get absolutely destroyed in horrific ways by these like crazy, unknowable, horrifying specter things that seem to be like ancient dimensional beings of some kind. And we see these obvious plays on reality and like all this sort of stuff, and it lends just itself to this idea that this is going to be a weird game. This is going to be a weird and super duper odd game. So I think that's it. I think that's what Hideo Kojima is up to. I think he's dealing with an extra dimensional sort of like undeath, but on his terms kind of game that's going to blend kind of like what we've seen with Metal Gear and whatnot, but instead of like cybernetics, it's going to be sort of justified in the idea that like literally death as a specter and as an enforcer is stuck in our realm.
Well, and knowing Kojima, it's probably at least that complicated. So it's
I don't know. No, yeah, it's at least that complicated. And I am simultaneously excited, a little scared, and I don't know, just laid out the idea that it literally took me that long to even explain the theory that I've propagated just based on 3 trailers. I can't even imagine what I'm going to want to say when the game comes out. Because it won't just tell you. Hideo never just tells you. He never just tells you outright, like, this is what's going on. He's going to string us along for hours.
And then he'll have a sequel that complicates it even more, and then a third one where you learn that everything you know is wrong, you know. So, you know, all that good jazz, but...
Yeah, I'm sure this is just a big cock tease, so it's whatever.
Did any of the trailers give a release date for this game?
No, none.
Okay, probably still looking at least a year or 2 away then. But, you know, also, I've been thinking about that CD Projekt developed, you know, CD Projekt Red from the Witcher series.
Cyberpunk 2025.
Yeah. Is there a release date for that?
Or 2055, I guess. No, the official release date is when it's ready.
Oh, cool.
And that is consistent with CD Projekt Red's sort of philosophy of not releasing unfinished games.
Well, cool. Cool.
Which is like number 1 on their core value lists as a company. So they're, whenever anybody asks them or even overtly pressures them for like hey, like maybe we can get a release date, every single time they just shoot it down with fireworks. They're like, we're going to release it when it's done, and you're going to like it.
That's awesome.
And it's cool. I mean, they stand on their own in that regard, and I'm glad that they can continue to make a business around it because they haven't disappointed us yet. So that's all good.
Awesome. Well, before we move on to questions, there's one. This isn't necessarily. Well, it could affect the video game industry as well, but probably the biggest thing to happen in the entertainment industry ever happened this morning when, because, bargains and deals for decades haven't really worked out between these two companies, Disney just went under the table and purchased all of the stock of 20th Century Fox today. That's what happened today. They spent
which is hilarious.
Officially, it's 52 billion, but I hear that because they also have to purchase the debt that 20th Century Fox was in, it actually comes out more to like 70 billion. So Disney spent anywhere between 52 to 70 billion purchasing 20th Century Fox, really the parent company, 21st Century Fox, in its entirety. Now, mind you, some people, I'll just say this because people get weird about a couple of things. No, they are not, Disney is not going to be handling things like Fox News and Fox Broadcasting. They're giving those back to Murdoch, the owner of 20th Century Fox, so that he can make a separate company off of things like that. So Fox News will remain Fox News, and Disney doesn't want any part of Fox News. So
they want their IPs.
Yeah, they really want the IPs. And I know that some people are surprisingly disappointed by this news because it means that things like Deadpool and Logan and like sort of the rated R spectrum of like the Marvel Universe may not happen. Although Bob Iger actually said that may not be the case, that they may actually start, like how Disney used to own Miramax, Disney might like make a separate studio to make R-rated films. Who knows? But the point is that things are going to start changing, but it's going to take at least a year before we actually notice some real change because it takes a long time for this process to happen and has to go through a few legal things. The Supreme Court technically still has to approve this and say that it's not a monopoly for this to actually happen. So there's a lot of things that actually have to happen before this is...
I wager a pretty high possibility that it will... it'll go through. Yeah, I see this going through.
It'll go through and it'll be fine, but it's going to take a while before... Like, we won't see X-Men and the Avengers team up for, like, 3 years, probably. It's going to take a while before, like, that stuff actually, like, comes to fruition. But I just thought I'd put that out there. It is a huge piece of entertainment news, and it's finally happened, guys. The Disney has finally bought 20th Century Fox, and it's when... I guarantee that in 2 years from now, when everything's said and done, and we finally see like the Fantastic Four team up with the Avengers, I guarantee you at that moment I will stop and say, "We did it, guys! We did it!
We did it! We actually assembled the Avengers!"
Yeah. So, anyways, that's barely video game news, but I just didn't know where else to say it, so I said it. Anyways, so Garrett, why don't you pick out a few questions? Anybody who's saying something that is not a Star Wars spoiler in the
you knew
chat
they were going to happen. I mean, it's like anybody who is on YouTube tonight is just shooting down Star Wars spoilers. That being said, I didn't actually see anybody say anything in chat that I think was an actual Star Wars spoiler. It literally just seemed like low-hanging, upsetting fruit. And to which I say to all the people announcing Star Wars spoilers in chat, try harder. If you're going to be a dick, try harder. But just being like, Luke dies. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Hockey Song wants to know my reaction to 20th Century Fox being bought by Disney, which is something I literally just said.
Yeah. A handful of people are throwing around the monopoly word, which Disney is growing in size, and certainly the ability to combat Disney is on certain fronts is becoming more difficult from an entertainment perspective. That being said, Disney is not a monopoly.
Disney is trying really hard not to be like that. That's why they're not taking Fox, because Disney already owns ABC News, Disney owns ABC, Disney owns ESPN, and so that's why they're not. When they acquire Fox, they're giving back Fox News and Fox Sports and a lot of the broadcasting stuff, because if Disney owned ESPN and Fox Sports and ABC News and Fox News and all that, like, then it could maybe start being considered a monopoly. So I think that's why they're safely kind of pushing some of those other things out of the way. They don't need them, and also, yeah, they don't, like, what is kind of going under the radar here is that Fox owns 30% of Hulu. Disney owns 30% of Hulu. That means that Disney effectively now owns the majority share of Hulu, which they will undoubtedly just kill off to make way for their new Disney streaming service. Now,
right, yeah. I don't want to get into net neutrality because I'm going to talk for like 9 hours on it if I do. But the net neutrality vote is a huge threat to a lot of streaming services. So I would say that Hulu and just the capacity to compete on a streaming level is a huge concern of mine with really any IP. And I would say that is really going to be one of the downsides of this acquisition potentially. But whatever. That doesn't necessarily this acquisition doesn't necessarily put Hulu at any more risk than they would have inevitably been in later down the line anyway. This is just how it's happening. So that's great. Now, but Disney is not a monopoly, and it will never be a monopoly so long as it continues to push. I'm going to use the word moralistic agenda, and I know that sounds super like derogatory and like really accusatory, and I don't mean it as such, but that is more or less what I mean. You know, as long as Disney is pitching itself as a family friendly, as you know, anything on this essential like moralistic entertainment level, you're really not going to see Disney cascading into monopoly territory because there's so much entertainment that it would just rather not be associated with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will it be a major player? Will it be the biggest player? Will it be, you know, the entertainment powerhouse? Yeah, probably. You know, probably will. But there's so many markets, at least at this point, that Disney hasn't expressed interest in and probably won't unless it does it so through like very, very many layers deep parent companies and whatnot. And I don't know, at this point, I just don't think that's conducive to their business. You know, they can let people do their own things in industries that they don't wish to compete in.
One thing that is being overlooked a little bit that is interesting is that Bob Iger was set to retire in 2019, but when Fox agreed to this deal, Robert Murdoch, the head of Fox, or it's something, I'm pretty sure it's Robert Murdoch, it's something Murdoch, head of Fox, said that he would only handshake this deal if Bob Iger remained at Disney. So the Disney executives gave Bob Iger emergency powers to continue being chairman and head of Disney for a further 3 years. So he will at least be the head of Disney CEO till at least 2021. And you know, I think Bob Iger's a nice guy. I don't think he's an evil man by any means, but I can't help but get flashes of Palpatine. You know, they've given him the emergency powers that he promises to give back as soon as this 20th Century Fox merger is smooth and complete, but then he'll, you know, just become the emperor of Disney, you know.
Good, Anakin.
Do it.
So, just to switch gears a little bit to keep us on track, Yoshi Lord was asking if you have ever played Last Guardian or at all into Last Guardian or have any opinion on Last Guardian. I'll give my opinion, even though I haven't really personally played it. I don't really own a console, so I can't, you know, play a lot of these things, but I can check them out kind of through my various secondhand means and whatnot. My impression of this Last Guardian was very good. It's, you know, on just kind of a presentation level. It's not my cup of tea in this very slow-paced, like, grand adventure, sort of like, I guess, puzzle-ish, platformer-ish sort of game and whatnot. And that seems to be the consensus amongst critics, is that it was just maybe a little too abstract as far as the gameplay is concerned. But yeah, no, games like The Last Guardian are perfectly good for me. I don't think it was a commercial success, though, unfortunately.
I did really enjoy, of course, the Shadow of Colossus, and I know that that's the same team. But,
yeah.
I don't know, yeah, I never got into Last Guardian, and I don't know why. I guess it just kind of came and went for me. I would
just
try
so slow. It's just so, I mean, Shadow of the Colossus would have been unacceptably slow if it weren't for the fact that it was pointillistically articulated by like 8 of the most epic battles that have ever taken place in video games.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool. I can see in the comments that I was about to say this anyway. I think it's like Jackie's, probably kind of Jackie's game.
Yeah.
Just cutesy, you know, kind of like, you know, a boy and his animals sort of game, whatnot. A little bit never-ending story, a little magical girl, you know, sort of thing. Like, you know, there's some tropes in there that, you know, Jackie likes.
Yeah, for sure. Justin Castro asks, now, don't kill me. I haven't watched Star Wars yet. Well, you're dead already. How do I watch them? Like, slowly
How can you be alive?
like, slowly over time, or watch them in marathon? I mean, It really depends on how hardcore you get. Are you the kind of person that likes to marathon things that you enjoy? For example, are you a fan of Harry Potter and you must watch them sequentially, like very fast? It just depends on you. For me, like I just rewatched all the Star Wars movies again, and man, when I was younger, I used to just power through them in a day. But we watched one a day.
Shit. Even Star Wars, and I think Star Wars is like my favorite thing.
Yeah. Star Wars, I had to watch one movie a day for the last 8 days just because it's hard being an adult and being a fan of something because there's just so much other crap you got to do in a day. But man, if I had nothing else to do, I definitely would have just sat there and watched them all in one day.
That's pretty good.
He also asks, how do I watch them? I personally recommend...
This is the part that I'm most interested in. I'm interested to see what order you're going to give him to listen.
Yeah, the order that I just watched them in, which is you start with episode 1, you go 1, 2, 3, Rogue One, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. I literally, just like however many more movies, like I know that the Han Solo movie will take place before Rogue One, so in the future when I watch them, I'll do 1, 2, 3, Solo, Rogue One, 4, 5, I go in chronological order of where the stories take place, just because I feel like that's the most fulfilling, and I know that after the prequels were made, George Lucas himself said that these were meant to be watched in chronological order, so I just kind of take him at his word. A lot of people, a lot of old school fans prefer to go 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. I think that that's stupid, but they are entitled to their opinion and the way that they do things.
Was it 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6?
No, it's the way that the movies were released was 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3.
I know, but I mean the order, this recommended order, this like hardcore fan watching order. You watch 4 and then 5, and then you backpedal to the prequels to get context for what's going on in 6, and then you watch 6.
No, I think that that's absolutely an atrocious way to watch them. That's so dumb. You know what? It's a way for you to skip episode 1. There's a word for it that I can't think of right now. You go 4, 5, 2, 3, 6. You skip 1 completely, which in my opinion, like that's so dumb because I think that's clear just like a Phantom Menace Jar Jar hating scheme.
I know, right? Like ignore everything with Jar Jar in it. Predominantly.
Like, let me tell you, like,
I think 1 is objectively a better movie than 2.
I think that looking at it from any perspective, 1 is better than 2. 2, I mean, here's the thing, guys, I like the prequels. I'm not a prequel hater, but episode 2 is by far episode 2 is by far the worst Star Wars movie. It's boring, it's overlong, and it lacks substance. I'll still watch it because I love me some Jango Fett, but it really is like the dumpster fire of Star Wars. Like it's just
the weakest for sure. It's got a handful of cool battle sequences, and it really gets into some cool sequences with the clones and whatnot. It's got the big battle in Geonosis, and it's got a few all of Jango Fett stuff, all the Jango Fett stuff. So that's cool. But yeah, other than that, it's really kind of an awkward movie. Yeah. So.
But anyways, forget all of that noise and just watch them chronological order: 1, 2, 3, Rogue One, 4, 5, 6, Force Awakens. Do yourself a favor, watch them like that. Don't listen to what anybody else says.
Certainly, you'll be experiencing Star Wars organically at that point. So, there you go.
I'll take one last question here. And it looks like Lizzie Eiselstein, I apologize if that's wrong. How do you manage all the things you do on YouTube, and how do you do it? How do I manage them? We don't manage them very well. And how do I do it? Very stressfully, let me tell you. Jesus.
You stay up late for months on end, and send Garrett angry messages at wee earlies in the morning a lot. That's how you do it.
All right.
To give you a more accurate assessment on that answer, it's the dude's been doing it for a while, and getting good at honing your skills like editing, and getting good at just making sure that from process start to finish you're not creating more work for yourself is basically the only reason that I think I can speak for Rich here and how we survive.
Survive. All right, guys. I think that's just about it. Garrett, did you have anything else you want to say?
Nope, just the standard send-off. Find me on twitch.tv/The Complaint Department. Me and my team stream various points throughout the week. And Woo, Legacy is out! We can finally consider what life after Legacy looks like.
Just very tired. All right, guys, thank you very much. Subscribe to this channel and make sure to hit that bell to keep notifications on. I'm Rich Alvarez. That was Garrett Allen. We are Video Game Talk every Thursday right here on the Rich Alvarez channel. Bye, guys!
Bye! Woo!